Assalamu alaikum. Welcome to Let's Talk. I am your hostess, Dr. Anita Raja. And once again, on tonight's show, we're going to discuss a new topic, which is very interesting. And I'm pretty certain very close to many new mothers' hearts. When we talk about childbirth, delivery, when we talk about becoming a mother, it's always very, very exciting, yet nerve-wracking. However, if you have given birth during the pandemic, it's been a whole new ballgame. And I must admit, I was one of these mothers myself. And I had a son 7 years ago, pre-pandemic, and there was a huge difference because the support we received 7 years ago, the sort of visitors you could get after having a baby, the way the birthing experience was, there was absolutely no comparison. However, I thought it might be interesting if we invite a guest on our show today who can share her delivery, her pregnancy, her story with us. She is a new mum to a COVID baby during the pandemic. Dr. Yosra Attia. Hello, assalamu alaikum. Welcome to our show.
Thank you for having me. How are you?
I'm absolutely fine. And it's such a delight for you to be able to make time, especially with a baby. I totally understand the struggles and the challenges that come with it.
Yeah.
So, Dr. Yosra, you were telling me before the show that your pregnancy was rather tough. I mean, before you fell pregnant, I'm sure you had some dreams about your pregnancy being a certain way, and you probably imagined your bump to look a certain way, especially with social media around us. I mean, it makes pregnancy look so glamorous and so easy. How was your experience different to that?
I think it started off pretty, we don't really know the definition of normal nowadays, do we? But I think it started off normal. I was about 34 weeks when the pandemic hit. And I remember it really, really vividly because I was at work and they released the advice that pregnant women are high risk. And I think it all kind of hit me at that point because before then COVID was just one of those things that was present in a different country. It wasn't that close to home yet. So I would say at the start of the pregnancy, it was okay. It was just vomiting every day kind of pregnancy. But it was the back end of it where it hit you that actually, you know what do you mean that my partner can't come into the scan with me? What do you mean that I can't have any visitors after I give birth? It was a bit surreal, I think is the word that I would use.
And it happened all of a sudden, didn't it? I mean, overnight. Everything changed.
Yeah, that was literally it. It was, I think we didn't really know what to make of it. We didn't know if it was real or if it was just rumors and whatnot. And in the back of your head, I'm a new mom. I'm a first-time mom. It was my first pregnancy. You worry and you think, okay, am I safe? Like, is my baby safe? What happens if I get COVID? Kind of all these restrictions aside, your mind is going a million miles an hour. But you can't stress because it's bad for the baby and it's bad for your health. So it was all, I'm just going to go back to the word surreal, really.
Mm-hmm. And your pregnancy was a tough one towards the end, especially. Do you want to tell us a bit about the condition that you had towards the end of your pregnancy?
Yeah, so I had something called placenta previa, which essentially means that the placenta was covering where the baby was coming out from. So I had my little boy, Zachariah, I had him 3 weeks early, 2 to 3 weeks early, via C-section because I couldn't risk going into labour because there was a very high risk of bleeding and bleeding heavily. So I had an elective C-section, which in a way there was pros and cons to it. I think before going in, I knew that I wasn't allowed to have visitors, and being a doctor myself, I think I said this to you, Anita, that ignorance is bliss. It's not always good to know about kind of what is about to happen and the recovery and what could go wrong. And the NHS and my care was fantastic, but it was a case of, wait, I don't want to be on my own here. Why can't my partner stay with me? I come from a family of healthcare workers, from my dad to my mum. My partner's a dentist, and they were all working throughout the whole pandemic frontline. But when it came caring for other people, but when it came for caring for their daughter or their wife, it was a bit like, well, why can't they care for me? Why can't they be there for me? And it was a lot. It was hard. It was really hard.
And what do you have to say about the sort of pressure that a new mom is under, especially when it comes to deciding? In your case, of course, you didn't have an option. You had to go for a C-section, and that was that. That was the best thing that you did for yourself and the safety of your baby. But then there's this option of having an elective section because you don't want to have a normal vaginal delivery. What did you make of that type of pressure? I mean, did you ever feel under pressure, or how was your experience?
I mean, I'm very kind of, I like to think that I'm a very positive person and like to leave it all to Allah and hope for the best. So I was never really a person that I knew that I couldn't plan it. You can't plan something like this. But I did have friends who were pregnant at the time, and I know for a fact, like, some of them were considering home births. And because they didn't want the risk of, number one, the risk of COVID in being in hospital, and number two, they wanted to be at home with their loved ones around them and have that kind of closeness and be less medicalized, which I completely understand. For me personally, I've always wanted to have a natural birth. It was something that I've always looked into, and I think once I heard the news that, you know what, Yosra, we're going to have to book you in for a section. I guess it was a bit, I was gutted, but at the same time, I was just thought, you know what, at least I know what's going on. At least there's some sort of control in this unknown time. So I guess it's really difficult to answer, Anita, isn't it? Because it's all in hindsight, and hindsight is a great thing, isn't it?
It is. It really is. And I guess if you sort of go for an elective C-section somehow, this is something that I have seen. There's a lot of judgment around it because you can come across comments like, "Are you too posh to push?" Then, or and it somehow is assumed that it's the easier way out. Though I may beg to disagree, having had two myself, and I'm sure that you can enlighten our viewers on that one.
Yeah, no, C-section is not an easy way out in any way, shape, or form. It's anxiety driven from the start. It's a major operation. It's a big operation. It might be done by doctors kind of 10 times a day or whatnot, but it is a major operation. It's a lot of stress for your body to go through. But then so is natural birth. You can't really compare them, in my opinion. You really can't. But the recovery after a C-section is tough. Personally, I ended up back in theatre because I had bleeding from my wound, and I ended up they were going to put me to sleep, and me being me was like, no, it's fine. We can do it under local anaesthetic. I can handle it. Just knowing that, like, I've not held my baby yet. I want to hold my baby. I want to kind of be on my feet as soon as possible. And with a C-section, you need to recover, and you're recovering from your pregnancy. You're looking after a baby. you're in pain. There's all sorts going on in your body that I'm not even going to mention. And all that while you're on your own. And you're not literally on your own because you've got amazing healthcare staff that are caring for you, but you're on your own mentally in a way.
Definitely.
And it isn't a case, you can't, if you've lost a lot of blood, it's not a case where you can just get up and leave and go home. It's very medicalized. And yeah, it was tough. It was tough.
And how was your sort of delivery? I mean, of course, you had a section. When was your husband allowed to join you? Of course, things have changed now. They can't be with you all the time. You're pretty much alone, left with the baby, pre-birth, post-birth.
Yeah, it's really, I mean, imagine kind of 5 years ago, if you were to tell someone this story, it'll be madness, wouldn't it? You'd think, what, really? How? But for us personally, I went in by myself. My husband was able to drop me off to the door with my bags, and I waited alone for this C-section. I had my pre-op done by the anaesthetist alone, and trust me, like, you know what they mean when they say certain words, and you try and like play it cool and like, I'm fine. But inside I was like, oh, no, I want my husband here. I want someone here. But you're just trying to be brave and put on a brave face, because as much as it was scary for me, it must have been terrifying for him. I mean, his wife and his baby, and he's just waiting. He was waiting. I think it was like 6 o'clock in the morning, and he was just waiting in the car park, waiting for the call to say, right, okay, you can come up because she's going to go into theatre. He was able to walk with me to the theatre room, and he was with me when I was anaesthetized and had my spinal. And he was allowed to stay for 2 hours afterwards.
Which is a treat. I guess that's a treat in today's scenario. I mean, you can hardly have them around you. So I guess, those 2 hours must have been amazing for you. Yosra, we're going to continue this chat after the break. Viewers, it's time to go on a break. Our number is on your screens. Join us if you want to be part of this conversation. Welcome back to Let's Talk. Before we went on to the break, we were talking about the life of a new parent during COVID, the experience of childbirth, how it was different to pre-COVID times when you could just take your partner in, you'd be in hospital after having a baby, and your relatives, your friends would be allowed to pop by with a piece of cake, some gifts, and it made the experience so much more beautiful. However, now when we look at the women who have been given birth during the pandemic, there have been such great challenges. Dr. Attia is here with us, and she's talking about her own experiences. Yosra, before we went on to the break, you were telling us about how your husband was given those 2 golden hours to stay after the baby was born. And of course, those golden hours are precious because you get to be with your partner. However, post-baby, how did you feel the support was in terms of, breastfeeding, coping with a new baby? Because I guess being a doctor, the downside is that people assume, especially midwives or anybody around you, that you know everything, whereas we know nothing about these things, and we do need the support being a new parent. So enlighten us about your experiences.
Okay, I mean, I went home the next day. I couldn't, I'm not a good patient. I couldn't hack hospital stay. So I went home the next day, and we had a bit of a contingency plan with myself and my family. I'm really, really lucky, alhamdulillah. I've got a really supportive family around me. I've got an older sister who had a baby literally 9 months before I did, so it was all fresh in her mind. So I was lucky in that sense of things with having that support there. But I was also very aware that I was just sent on my way, and midwife appointments, when they came out to see you, weren't necessarily face to face, and I've never even met my health visitor. Zach has never met a health visitor. Zach's not been weighed, I think, since his 6-week check, when I took him to the GP, just because of COVID. And I think I would probably speak for a lot of new mums out there when I say it was frustrating, and you feel a bit forgotten, in the sense of all you get answered with, well, we can't at the moment because COVID. Sorry, we're not doing that anymore because COVID. And you reach a point where you just stop asking for help. And I think that's where it gets a bit sad and potentially a little bit dangerous as well.
No, that's very true, Yosra. You're absolutely right. I mean, my baby is a COVID baby like yours, and it's never seen the health visitor, never been weighed. I mean, you're lucky you got him weighed on the 6-week check. Our GP didn't have the scales, so he didn't even do that. So it's a bit dire, the whole situation at the moment, and we are a bit forgotten now. There is a lot of pressure on new mums in terms of whether they're going to bottle feed or breastfeed. And of course, there's a lot of guilt associated with bottle feeding, because if you are bottle feeding your son, again, it's a bit of a failure. You've been a failure. You've failed yourself, your baby. And there's a lot of judgment around it as well. How was your experience? Did you ever feel pressurized, or did you sort of take the decision on your own? Did you get the support you required?
I think I had that classical first-time mum of, oh, I'm going to breastfeed my child. My child's not going to have any screen time. All their food's going to be organic. Do you know what I mean? Like that classical first-time mum ideology. So I did want to breastfeed. That was my intention. I didn't have an easy journey. And back to kind of having that supportive family around me, I was really lucky in that sense. And I managed to breastfeed despite kind of oversupply and little supply and building up my supply and reflux and going back into hospital because he was jaundiced, because he wasn't gaining weight. And I kind of, it was people around me that said, he's a bit yellow. And it was me that called the midwife and said, can we get him checked? And it was a lot of chasing your tail when you should be concentrating on yourself. And I'm really conscious, especially now that I've returned back to work, with new mums, that sometimes, I mean, I would have loved to give my little one a bottle earlier on, but I couldn't. He wouldn't accept it. I didn't have a choice but to breastfeed. So, and he had really bad reflux with it, but it was the only way to feed him. And I was lucky in the sense that when I went back into hospital, and I'd previously done a pediatric job, and I knew that there is support out there, and I asked for it, and I managed. I mean, I never met the person, but she would call me every day and give me advice, and it was just invaluable, because, and that along with my sister kind of helping me, and I was able to do it, and we passed the hard stage and we got there eventually, and he started gaining weight. But Anita, it was terrifying. It was really, really scary. And now that I'm back at work, I'm more aware of it, and I really hope that one day that there is kind of a more open access to kind of breastfeeding support and postnatal support, because I do feel like it kind of stopped day 5 post giving birth. That was it. You've given birth now. You're on your own. And I've got nothing to compare it to, because I've not had a baby before COVID. So it's daunting. And it's scary for kind of, if it happens again, I'm very aware that I don't want to be left on my own in that situation again. Do I want to breastfeed again? I'm not sure, because of the experience that I've had.
And, for new mums, Yosra, are there you talked about breastfeeding support that your hospital was giving new mums, but nationally, is there any support out there for women who are struggling? Because as you've rightly identified, if you have had a baby during COVID, unfortunately, mostly it is the fact that, nobody wants to really see you and show you things the way they used to before. So, if somebody is struggling, can you signpost us towards some useful resources?
Absolutely. I would recommend speaking to your local pediatric unit. They nearly always have breastfeeding consultants there that are available. There is also breastfeeding consultants that you can get, lactation consultants that you can see privately. They're able to kind of assess if you're having any trouble. They're also able to snip any tongue ties. A lot of it is happening over kind of Zoom and Skype at the moment, but with that, they are still able to assess the latch and assess how baby's feeding and the positioning and everything like that. And it is invaluable. It differs from trust to trust, and it differs from area to area. But certainly, I would advocate for speaking to your GP or speaking to your midwife and seeing what there is out there, because you'll only find out if there's nothing, then there's nothing. There's always lactation consultants available privately, but if there is someone that's available that you can talk to through the NHS, if you don't ask, you don't get.
That's right. And yes, right. The private lactation consultation, how expensive?
Oh gosh, I'm not 100% sure, to be honest with you, Anita. I wouldn't say that they were massively expensive. I wouldn't say kind of hundreds by any means.
Okay. Right.
But I can't give you a price. I personally didn't go privately, so I can't give you a price on that.
Right. We've got a lovely message from a viewer, Yosra. You'd be interested in hearing this. So, salam to Dr. Anita Raja and our guest, Dr. Yosra Attia. Mashallah, you both look nice. Alhamdulillah, everything went good for you and having a child in pregnancy. The labor part during the pandemic in the last few years. Life as a new parent during the pandemic is never easy. I'm glad to hear you have friends who are parents, and having a mum and friends can be sweet. I mean, it's so true, isn't it, Attia? How would you have coped without the good support network around you? Unimaginable.
Honestly, alhamdulillah, I'm so lucky, and I am so aware that not everyone is that lucky. And I think I've repeated myself, and I'll repeat myself again. It's about reach out for that help. You're not on your own. There are services out there. There might not be kind of advertising it as they are, because services are limited. Even to this day, a year and a half on from the start of the pandemic, they are limited, but they are still available. So if you're on your own, you're not on your own. Ask.
And in terms of the fear that people have about the recovery from a C-section, because we're towards the end of our segment now, we're left with the last 2-3 minutes. So I want to get a message off you, Yosra, and I also want you to quickly tell our viewers whether it's a big nightmare or whether it's doable, because some people fear a C-section far more than they should.
We're women. It's doable. We power through, and it's worth it in the end. And you never underestimate the power that you have in your body, and how amazing that your body is at recovering. It's painful. I was in pain for 1 to 2 days, but I was being shouted at by my mum and my sister for hoovering on day 5, because you forget that you've had major surgery. So my advice would be, don't underestimate yourself.
Lovely. And also in terms of the social media pressure, really quickly towards the end, how did you cope with the social media pressure of looking perfect during pregnancy and afterwards?
I just didn't go on social media. I didn't show my face. Yeah, the pressure's there, but as long as, I think it's about making it okay to not be perfect all the time. And I think we are working towards that. I know there's a lot of perfect out there, but there's a lot of imperfect out there, and they're the more relatable people, in my opinion. So, yeah.
Thank you so much, Yosra, for coming on our show today and sharing your beautiful experience with us. I mean, this was so enlightening because I guess it's important to get this from another person. So other women out there in a similar position or hopeless about the situation during the pandemic can get some hope and can still enjoy their experience. Thank you so much, Yosra. So viewers, the idea of doing today's show was that we talk about the challenges of being a parent during the pandemic, and I hope that you enjoyed the first segment of our show. The second segment is about mom guilt. We have invited a guest who's going to compare her both experiences, the first one and the second one. At the moment's time for a break. Stay with us. Welcome back to Let's Talk. I'm Dr. Anita Raja. Today's show is very close to my heart because we are discussing being a mom. I'm a mom myself, and I totally understand how it feels to be one. Of course, when we are much younger, we've got these dreams of being this perfect pregnant woman who looks lovely with her bump, and we dream of being in this position where we're holding this cute baby who sleeps throughout the night, is adorable, cute. We've got the support that we like. And of course, we also dream about bouncing back as soon as that baby is out because we're going to be nice and slim after the baby. But the reality, unfortunately, is far from this. Being a mother is a whole new ballgame. It comes with a lot of challenges. There are the sleepless nights, the baby blues, the mental health, the hormones, the tearfulness, the pain of having a normal vaginal delivery. The stitches hurt. If you've got a C-section, you can be sore. You can feel unwell. There is the pressure of whether or not you'll be able to breastfeed or not. If you're breastfeeding, you can have an infection. It can end up in mastitis. If you're not, you can end up in mastitis, having a breast infection. You cannot win. You simply cannot win. And sometimes you feel very lonely through this time. And it may not be that you actually are lonely, but it is the hormones that make you feel that way. You worry about your baby's safety at all times. You're alert and your brain is on overdrive. It's immensely difficult to be a mother. And this is perhaps why in Islam, in our religion, the stature of a mother, the respect that's given to a mother, is far more than that of a father. I'm not trying to put the dads down today. I mean, you guys do an excellent job to put up with us and to look after us and the babies. But the struggle that a mother goes through is simply unmatchable. Nobody can be a mother. And then the struggle doesn't end there because if your baby starts sleeping through, you realize that there is a sleep regression that's just around the corner where the baby is all of a sudden going to decide that they don't want to sleep at night. And then there are the teething problems when the baby's so uncomfortable that the baby simply cannot sleep at night. And then there is the time when these kids become teenagers, they go to school, and then you worry about them again. So the worry is endless. So today we are celebrating mothers, these beautiful humans, these beautiful souls out there who give birth to us and then raise us and worry about us till they reach their graves. So on our show, in the second segment, we have Dr. Saba Tahir with us. Dr. Saba Tahir, welcome to our show.
Oh, hi. Sorry, I just had a slight glitch. I couldn't actually hear anything then. So
can you hear me now?
Just repeat. Yes, I can hear you now. Yeah.
Lovely, lovely, lovely. Saba, thank you so much for taking out time. I just wanted to take a minute to tell you how lovely you're looking. You are a general practitioner. You are a mother to two beautiful boys. And my first question to you is that you have had the privilege to be able to compare your first childbirth with your son pre-COVID to your second baby that was born post-COVID. How would you compare the two experiences?
Well, I think obviously with the whole COVID, pandemic thing, it's been a bit of a nightmare for quite a few people, and especially I think a lot of women that have given birth during this period as well. So comparing the two births was, totally different experiences. Pre-COVID with my first son, it was, really relaxed with my husband present. It was just like, any normal kind of delivery that you would expect. However, with the COVID one, I remember, getting myself all worked up before my actual cesarean was due, because I was due an elective cesarean. So it was actually a set date and time. However, my body decided to go into natural contractions, and I was a bit early. When I arrived at the hospital, I was then hit with the dilemma of whether I want to continue with my natural delivery, or if I want to go and have my cesarean, where the lovely consultant came down and said, your theatre slot's ready, would you like to go? But all I could hear in the background was, stories about COVID and women having had cesareans and unfortunately passing away. So my nerves were all over the place. And then to find out that my husband couldn't actually join me during the birth giving process. So I was in a bit of a dilemma. Do I go for the cesarean and risk what, is in the media about women who are having cesareans and having these blood clots? Or do I go and have a natural delivery and not have my husband there? So it was a lot of tears, I'll be honest, but eventually, everything went smoothly. Women's Hospital was where I had my second son, and they were fantastic throughout the whole process. So at the end of the day, I was just glad that baby was out healthy. With everything that was going on, I think you can just be grateful for the health of your loved ones at that time, especially with what you were hearing in the media and what everyone else was going through. So, it was totally two different experiences, but I was just grateful that it was all, positive at the end, where I could come home with my beautiful little boy. It was definitely, two separate experiences, which I will go on to tell my sons when they're older, and I'm sure they'll look back and think, mum was a super mum. So.
You certainly are a superman, Saba. I was going to ask you one more question. So when a woman has a baby, she treats the baby like a trophy. So she wants to take the baby on baby dates with other mums. She wants to meet other people, and she wants to show off her baby. Well, most of the time that she does. During your after your baby postnatally, we went into lockdown pretty quickly. How did you cope with not being able to show your baby off, meet your loved ones?
Yeah, no, that's a very good question, Dr. Raja, because that was a big part of the whole birth giving thing, and also not being able to have family members come to the actual hospital and see how I'm doing initially was quite frightening, to be honest. You're just left all alone. My husband wasn't allowed to be there for longer than a certain amount of time. So that was all like, kind of, right, you've been here a couple of hours, you've seen baby, off you go now. Your wife will be fine, which I was. But, soon after having a baby, you want your loved ones there. You want people to visit you, see how you're doing. And then it was the whole, your husband comes to the ward, puts baby in the car seat, you get to take baby out and everything. But this was like, no, we're going to literally escort you down the hallway without anyone else, just you and baby. And then you're going to go to the exit. Baby's going to go into the car seat and into the car. It was all so surreal. And then to come home and not have anyone there, where normally in I think a lot of our in the Asian culture, we have lots of family members standing waiting to greet you with banners and welcome home and congratulations. But I didn't have any of that, unfortunately. There wasn't anyone there. I'd love to have had my mum and dad there to see my son, and also my sisters and even my close friends to have shared this moment with me. But unfortunately, we couldn't have that at this time. But like I said, I keep saying this, that I think with what was happening in the media, you can just be really grateful that, you know, number one, I was well, and number two, baby was all healthy as well. And, you know, and I came home, and there was plenty of people who, unfortunately, at that time didn't even get to leave hospital. So I think just that kind of feeling of you know, being blessed and being, you know, lucky enough to be walking out of a hospital setting during that time was, you know, just a relief in itself, that you just felt, okay, you know, at least I'm home. But yeah, I did miss that whole, you know, fuss over the new baby and, you know, my mum coming around and helping out. I think that was something that really did make me quite emotional, especially after having a baby with all the baby blues and everything. I think I missed my mum a lot, and also my sisters who, during my firstborn, were amazing help. And, you know, they came round soon as I had my eldest, and they were just hands-on with everything. They didn't let me do anything. But unfortunately, this time it was all like, right, off you go, there you go. You know, you've got your COVID baby, right, go, and you and your partner, whoever's in your household, just kind of get through the lockdown. And that was it. It was quite a very weird kind of time, I think. But yeah.
You made it. You did it.
Yes,
and you did really well. You did it. Yes. And Dr. Saba, I was also going to ask you that you said that, of course, you missed your parents. You missed, you know, the sort of interaction that you had with your first child. I mean, your first child was greeted, welcomed by your family members. But during the second baby, of course, we couldn't do that because of the restrictions. How did you sort of plan your lockdown sessions then? How did you do that? Did you bond a lot with your sons, or did you miss your friends during lockdown, especially because we had two when your baby was quite young?
Yes, I think there were pros and cons to the lockdown, to be honest. I think one of the pros was that I could spend a lot of me time with my boys. And even though as much as I really wanted the whole hustle and bustle of family, I think the time that I had together with my sons and my husband, just us as a family unit, was, you know, absolutely precious. And we made so many amazing memories during that time. We made the most of, I think, a bad situation. So we did enjoy at times not having, you know, a ton of guests coming through. But there were moments, I'll be honest, where we were like, right, okay, I do actually want visitors through the door now. You know, just come and see my, you know, this adorable little baby that I've brought home. And, you know, I wanted to show him off to the world and my friends. But like I said, it was one of those times where you've just got to kind of adapt, I suppose. But yeah, we did adapt to it, and we did create amazing memories. We've got photos of us for just doing our own thing, and, you know, we had Zoom phone calls, and I'm sure we've got photos of Zoom calls, and you know, little kind of parties going on through Zoom. So yeah, it was a very different kind of time, but like I said, I think we all managed and we all got through that.
Yes, and I guess being a human gives you the ability to be able to adapt to different situations. Some of these are not very comfortable, yet most of us made most of what we could make out of the pandemic, make memories. Dr. Saba Tahir was sharing her story with us. We're going to continue our conversation with her after the break. If you want to be part of this conversation, our number's on your screens, and you can WhatsApp us, you can call us. It's time for a break. Welcome back to Let's Talk. I'm your hostess, Dr. Anita Raja. Before we went on to the break, we were talking to Dr. Saba Tahir, who's a general practitioner here in Birmingham. And she was telling us about her experience having a first baby 7 years prior to the second one, where, you know, the baby was welcomed, life was normal. I mean, it was just a distant memory now, normality is. And then she had a second baby during COVID times, and how difficult and challenging her experience was with the second baby. Saba, you are a general practitioner and you work full time. I mean, within our culture, there is a stigma still around the fact that if you have a child, it is naturally assumed that you should work less, that you should spend more time at home because your children need you all the time. And of course, there is a lot of guilt that comes with this pressure. How have you coped with that?
Well, that's a very good question, to be honest. I think historically, I think everyone has the idea that women are supposed to be at home looking after the children, whereas the men go away and, work and provide for the family. But a lot of changes have happened over the years, and women have become a lot more empowered. They want to pursue their dreams. They want to have careers. They want to contribute equally, if not, more towards the income of the family. And things have really changed. And I think, a lot of people still feel that that's not right. Certain cultures, they feel that by working, you're being a bad mum as such, where, this whole mum guilt comes from. And constantly, I think working mums already go through the juggling act of trying to pursue their careers with motherhood, which can be very challenging together anyway. But then when you get thrown in this guilt from external factors and people talking, saying that, maybe you should be spending your time more with your children, why are you working? That's not your job. It can get very stressful, and it can, put additional pressures and stresses on you, which you don't really need. But what people forget is that, by working, you're not, not being there for your children either. I feel that as a working mum, I can give my two sons a lot more than if I wasn't working. And that's a choice that I made, and I feel that every woman has that right to make that choice, whether you choose to stay at home or whether you choose to go to work. That's your choice and your right. I don't think people should look down upon women who want to go out and work. If anything, I feel like you're a good role model to your children. I hope that my boys in the future look back at their mum, working so hard, and appreciate what their mum done for them and the opportunities by me working brought to them, growing up, and all the perks that they got from me contributing as well towards the household income. So I do feel that this mom guilt is quite a big issue still in a lot of us working women. And I work with amazing women every day, and we do talk about this, about leaving our children at home, and how you feel quite guilty at times, but then you tend to tell yourself that you're not doing it just for yourself or anything. As much as I love my career, I'm doing it for my children as well. Like I said, for a better future for them, for our family, contributing towards the income of the family, and just helping out wherever I can.
Yes, and Saba, you've done a great job. I mean, your oldest son has been given a scholarship in school, and I think that speaks for itself, the sort of effort that you've put in the education for your children and the effort that you've put within your household just speaks for itself, doesn't it? Saba, I was going to ask you one more thing. You emphasized on the fact that there is mum guilt, and most mums talk about it. I mean, I totally agree with this because I'm a mother myself, and I've been told by my own parents, my own immediate family, time and again, that I should be working less, and that I shouldn't be working that much because, within the community, within the South Asian community, again, there is this pressure where it is sort of a pressure that's constant, where your immediate family sometimes actually advise you to not work that much without understanding how important it is for you to keep working so that this car keeps moving, because you're one wheel and your partner is the other wheel of the car. Now, in terms of coping strategies, you've given us some, and, yes, we've got to speak to ourselves. We've got to tell ourselves that we're doing what's best for our children. But would you agree that we overcompensate when we're at home? Because there is this guilt, and then we try to make an extra effort for our children to take them out, to entertain them. And we miss out on seeing our own friends and having the me time that we actually deserve.
Yeah, no, I totally agree there with you, Dr. Raja. I mean, we do. I mean, when it's my day off, my priority is my children and trying to do, let's do this, let's do that, and trying to compensate for the time that I probably haven't had with them during the week. And sometimes it can be overbearing, and you can forget yourself in that, and not realize that you're a person in this as well. So not only are you working constantly throughout the week, on your days off, you're also trying to entertain these little humans and do so much for them to overcompensate the time that you haven't spent with them. And like you said, it can be quite overbearing. You can miss out on your own me time, as I call it. You can miss out on, catching up with your family and your friends as well, because you're busy trying to, find things to do with your children that you would have done during the week. But I think it's one thing I've learned going forward is that to prioritize. So there's certain things in my life that I feel like can wait. And the biggest one is, I think, laundry, which is my pet hate. So I feel like that's something that can be on the back. And my kids come first. So I feel like I prioritize, yes, the clothes are washed, but, sorting them out, putting away is something that can wait. And I rather spend that time having a movie time with my kids, or, baking, or playing in the garden, going for a walk, doing things like that. And I think every mum, there's no right or wrong, and I want to put that out there that, there is no right or wrong. Every family has their own ways of how they prioritize things in their lives and how they, work as a family unit. By me going to work and being a working mum, I wouldn't say is the best thing, and women that choose to stay at home, it's the wrong thing. No, those are life choices that you make. And, who's to say going forward, I will continue to be a full-time working mum? No, I might, change my mind, and women that are stay-at-home mums might change their minds and want to pursue a career. So it's all what works for you. So, and one thing I'd say is never, ever compare yourself to anyone else or anyone else's life. You do you, and you do what makes you happy and what works for you and your family. And try not to let others get you down. What I say is, if there are people out there that make you feel guilty, make you feel down, just distance yourself from them. It's the best thing to do. Sometimes you can't help it, but I think try and speak to people who will empower you, people that will, support you through your difficult times, and, not put a negative on what you're doing. Because I think there's enough in life to deal with. And, we do deal with a lot as humans in general, not to be given additional guilt for, pursuing a career, which I don't see as anything bad at all.
They say that behind every successful man, there is a woman. Would you agree that behind every successful woman, there is a man? If you agree, who do you think is behind you, your support network?
Yeah, I think success is, it comes as a unit, not just as one individual person, or, just behind the man is a woman or behind the woman is a man. No, I think it's a whole unit. For me, it's, my kind of support unit is my parents, my mum and dad. I cannot thank them enough for how much they contribute towards the childcare and upbringing and the input that they have in my son's lives. Also, my husband, he's been awesome throughout the pandemic, the whole schooling. He has been marvelous during that. I to be honest, I didn't have a clue what was going on, and he was at the forefront helping Zayan out. And I think a lot of the scholarship that my son got is down to his father's input. And also, I think my friends as well. I've got, an excellent group of friends, and also my sisters who are on my WhatsApp group, and we all keep each other going. So this is my support network. And I think every family and every woman has her own support network. It doesn't matter how big or small it is. It's the people that make a positive contribution to your life.
That's right. And in terms of mums that stay at home, it is a fact that their job, I guess, is the hardest, because as a working mum, you at least get a bit of a break and you get out of the house and you meet other people. Yeah. Whereas I think for them, I mean, you grew up seeing a stay-at-home mum. I grew up seeing a stay-at-home mum. I mean, there's absolutely no comparison. They do an excellent job. And I think the sort of effort they put in is unconditional. And we can certainly not compare ourselves to these great humans who sit at home and raise children and give them their, 200% perhaps. Saba, we're towards the end of our show. We've got our last 2 minutes left, but I certainly want you to give us a beautiful message towards the end of the show, because I want you to be the one who's speaking to our viewers. So is there anything that you definitely want to say to our viewers in terms of, the experiences you've had, a life lesson from your own life, anything you'd like to share?
Yeah, I think I just want to say to all the women out there that you are amazing, number one, for creating miracles, and the whole birth giving process, whether it's during COVID or not COVID. I think what a woman goes through, and then postnatally, the whole emotions and everything that we go through physically and mentally, the pressures on us from everyone to, look a certain way, do a certain thing. But I just want to say to you all that no matter who you are, working women or stay-at-home mums, you are doing a fantastic job. There's no right or wrong, and don't let anyone put you down or tell you otherwise. Stay positive, stick with people that empower you. Don't ever compare yourself to, anyone else. You are you, and you're doing a fantastic job.
Beautiful message, Dr. Saba Tahir. It was absolutely beautiful to have you on our show. Viewers, I hope you enjoyed our show this week. If you did, join us next week at 9 p.m. on British Muslim TV. Allah Hafiz.